Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton. My name is Ryan T. Husk, and we are continuing on. Our good friend and brother, Aron Eisenberg, has sadly and tragically passed, but as we are sure he would have wanted, the show will continue. We will still be rewatching and reviewing the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episodes, and today we are resuming with season 2, episode 1, called "The Homecoming." Homecoming. How you doing, Cirroc?
Doing good. We're gonna take a crack at this and see how it is. Without Aron, because we're missing our go-to guy who really gives insight on breaking down these episodes. But let's give it a try, Ryan. And I got a chance to watch this first episode of season 2, which is a 2-parter or a 3-parter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's really cool because it seems like they kind of, over the break, they must have, kind of thought things over and said, hey, let's try to start making this a little bit more serialized because, the writing seemed a little bit improved. It seemed a little bit more big picture, and, this one's to be continued. And I don't remember if it's 2 episodes or 3 episodes. I feel like it might be 3, actually.
Yeah, I looked ahead. The next one is The Circle, which, continuation of this one. What did you think about the episode?
Well, first of all, sorry, I just took a sip from my watermelon flavor LaCroix.
LaCroix.
What are you drinking?
Water.
That's so much better than LaCroix.
Oh, just pure water.
Okay, that's fine. And the director was who?
Rick Colby, which he directed a few episodes. I remember him being really good. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he ended up having some kind of relationship with somebody on the Voyager set. I don't want to get into detail because I don't know for sure. But there was a little bit of controversy behind that. Yeah, but no, Rick was a really good director. I thought this episode was, as far as the direction and the camera shots, was pretty well executed. And then you have the storyline.
So let's get into it. And those of you at home, there's going to be a little bit of a void. We're going to stumble and bumble a little bit because, we won't have Aron with us. Maybe sometime in the future, we'll have other people joining us. We may even have a third person, coming on permanently a little later. But for now, we're just going to keep going and do our best. So forgive us if we're not perfect. We've already gotten used to it, though. So honestly, I liked it. What's cool is I feel like I'm watching these episodes again for the first time. I've said that before because I haven't watched them in a long time, so I don't remember them. And I remember the first and second season not being very good and kind of skipping through it pretty quickly. But when I rewatch them now, I'm like, these are pretty good episodes. Like this is very Star Trek. That first season felt like Star Trek, like how I remember it. With a little bit of the uniqueness that Deep Space Nine brought, which was about family, about relationships, about, political things and, the inner workings of diplomacy and all that. And it wasn't so much about like the monster of the week and the formulaic thing as much, lots of fireballs, as Aron used to like to say and point out. This one I liked. We had a lot to sink our teeth into. There were some moments. There was a one funny scene I really liked with you, actually, Cirroc, talking to your dad, Captain Sisko, or at the time Commander Sisko, and you're talking about going on a date with a girl, and you said something to the effect of, "You're not ready for this conversation yet, Dad."
Yeah,
remember that?
I remember that. Actually, that made me laugh because his response, "I'm not ready." Like, uh, here I am saying, "Yeah, I think we take this girl to the hollow suite, or maybe to upstairs to her house in her room." And he's like, "No, no, 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 no. Those are all bad ideas. Why don't you hang out at a Starbucks?" Um, so I thought that was pretty interesting, and it shows another side of Cisco, like a slightly uncomfortable side in these at this moment. He seems a little bit unnerved to have to deal with this issue at this exact moment. Like, what do you mean you're going on a date? What do you mean you got to do this? Let me give you some advice, but I don't have time right now because I'm in the middle of something big. But yeah, I like that. I mean, it was a good thing. And Aaron used to say all the time that he'd like to see the more interaction between Cisco and Jake, and that's what we got. At least to start off this now second season, we got some of that interaction, and Jake gets stood up for his date, and you get to see his dad kind of, um, you know, picking his son back up. There's a lot of things that I liked as far as that was concerned. Yeah, I think that it really shows a side of Cisco that that makes him more vulnerable and more human. It's less authoritative, you know, uh, decision maker, and more what do I do now kind of fatherly moments was important.
Hmm.
One of the other things that stood out to me on this episode was the Leonidas, this character Leonidas, which
Yeah,
I
is
thought
that
was,
is that what he was called? I was like, wait, is that the 300 guy?
yeah, I don't have subtitles on my DVD copies, so
Let me look this up.
I can't actually see the name and how they spell it, but it sounded to me like they kept saying Leonidas,
Oh, you know what his name is? Leonalis.
Leonalis.
That is not at all.
So
I thought I heard Leonidas too. I was like,
you heard that too.
yeah,
So I was hearing Leonidas the whole time. I was like, is that the guy from 300? Are they about King Leonidas?
yeah.
Which was like just going to be another thing that DS9 foreshadowed, right? But no, I guess it was it wasn't Leonidas. But what I do like about the character, and one thing that DS9 does a lot of, is tell these complicated stories where things are not so cut and dry, so black and white. There's
Hmm.
always these layers of understanding that help alter the perception. And one of the things that I thought was interesting about the altered perception on this character was, you have a guy that's being touted as this hero, this rebellious leader, and then you find out that he's not what he appears to be, which is him telling this story about how
Yeah,
he accidentally killed this Cardassian, right?
yeah. Which was a little strange because he said this Cardassian in his underwear falls on top of him, and that's where they find him. And I'm thinking, did they tell us that he was like so weak at the time, like famished from hunger or whatever, that he wasn't even able to just kind of like roll out from under a Cardassian, or was he like a gigantic Cardassian, or why was he pinned down there?
He just liked to be underneath this underwear to Cardassian. I
That
think
had
that
just
was
gotten out of the water, that was just kind of like dripping all over.
yeah, it was a comfortable place to be at that particular
Kept him
moment.
all warm and
And
snuggly.
nice and warm. Yeah, nothing like body heat when you're cold.
Yeah,
Um, but no, I mean, it told me the story of this, how we perceive things and perception, and
that's right.
I guess I thought of politics in a certain way because I think of it, politics is so heavily in the news these days. But I think of people that we look up to in different ways, especially in the leadership position, and that's why politics is really a good example for that, where we see people and we put them on a pedestal of being these heroes or of being something larger than life. And well, we sometimes and we often overlook and don't take into consideration is like um sometimes these are just people like you and me,
Mm.
and they have their flaws, they have their fears, um They might have moments of courage, as we all do, and that's the human side of all of us. And I think what we tend to do is put people so high up on pedestals that we forget to see the human parts of them. You know.
And that's right. And that theme's been used once or twice in Star Trek, and I can't remember when. And those of you listening or watching, you might remember an instance, but something where the people just needed a rallying point. They needed somebody to rally behind, and so the people around that person kind of, they kind of embellished to give the people something to believe in, because a lot of times we'll create these characters that are larger than life for the greater good, for, to give people some hope, to give people something to believe in, something to fight for, something to really say, hey, yeah, that guy did it, so can we, do it for this guy or whatever, and he became like, the spark that ignited their revolution or what they were fighting for. And I don't remember what other instances there were of that, but it reminded me of that. And so here we have this guy that's like, hey, I didn't really do much, but now all these people are chanting my name and, as their battle cry. And so who am I to take that away from them? He kind of feels like he's in the prison of his own expectations, like they expect him to be this super thing, and he's not, or doesn't really feel like one.
And as you were saying that, it kind of made me think of what it reminds me of. It actually reminds me of Sisko, because Sisko is like being heralded as the prophet, and
right.
he's like, no, I'm not the prophet. No, you got it wrong. I'm not the emissary. I'm not the guy you're looking for. And he's thrust into that position where he is the symbol for the faith, or the symbol for the courage that they need to go forward. And I think that's kind of a microcosm of how we see Sisko. Sisko is this reluctant prophet, a reluctant emissary, at least in the beginning now so far. And I feel like, sometimes in these positions where people are, there's an episode of The Wire, and which is a police drama show about drug dealers and police
There's
trying to
also an
catch them.
episode called The Wire in the second season of Deep Space Nine, I believe.
Oh, really?
It's one of the best ones, if I remember correctly. It's got to do with the Cardassian stuff. I'll have to remember. But yeah, no, The Wire TV show is very highly heralded.
Yeah, and there's a scene in The Wire where one of the characters gets written up in a newspaper article, and then the newspaper article was talking about this particular character, and he wrote nothing but great things about him. He did this, he helped these people, he did all these things. And when he read the article about himself, he burst out into tears. And the people were saying, what's wrong with that portrayal of you? It's all good things, you did this, you did that. And one of the things he said was, well, it doesn't say the bad things I've done. And it only mentions the good things that I've done. And I've also done bad things too. I've been less than great in many moments in my life. And it is humbling, and yet also it's not true to only look at the good things of somebody, or to only look at the bad things. We take into account the full measure of a person. You have to kind of weigh all of the things, and so that's what I'm reminded of as well.
So I just checked, and season 2, episode 22 is called The Wire. And the reason I remembered that one, I'm sure a lot of people also remember that one, is because it was almost like Garrick's coming out party. Until then, they hardly used Garrick at all. And he became like this really, really cool, cult icon character, because he has some kind of issue and Bashir is trying to save him. I think he's dying. I don't remember the exact details, but this was the one where Garrick famously is having this conversation, and he's constantly like lying and changing his story about this really happened, and then it was this, and then there was that. And Bashir says to him, he says, how much of that was true? After once he saves his life and it's all over, how much of all that was true? And Garrick says, all of it. And Bashir says, even the lies? And Garrick says, especially the lies. And it really gets us to sink our teeth into Garrick and the Cardassians. And for me, way back in the day, I think that was the first episode that got me to go, ooh, it's a good show, and that's a cool character. And then Garrick became my favorite character from there. But anyway, before we get too deep in anything, I also want to give a big shout out to our friend out in Germany, Mr. Immo Radke, who is our new associate producer. Thank you very much for being our associate producer, Immo. Really cool dude out in northern Germany, not very close to any major cities, kind of out in the boonies somewhere. And also to Mr. J.J. Lendl, designed the thing right behind me. You've heard us talking about him quite a bit. He also was the fellow that designed the Captain Nog Forever design that we're putting on shirts and mugs and all those things, raising money for Aaron's family. And he did it so quickly. I had the idea to do this. Within 2 days, he had it done. Really super nice guy. He did it pro bono. We really appreciate that. And so definitely check out jjlendl.com. Cirroc, you liked the Captain Nog Forever design, right? I'm going to take that as a yes.
I like the Captain Nog Forever design. I like, I like the shirt that Homer was wearing on the last time we had on table. And I think merchandise looks great. Ira, another supporter of the Captain Nog Forever. And I think it just in general was a great idea that you came up with, Ryan, to kind of honor Aaron and solidify his place amongst the captains forever. Something that I think he would definitely have cherished and appreciated. So I think he did a job well done, able to raise money for Melissa and help her out. So it was all around a good idea, well executed. And then the product itself looks great. I think J.J. Lendl and you
love it.
Came up with some really cool stuff.
Love it. A lot of people are liking it a lot.
The designs are awesome. So
yeah, a lot of people are liking it a lot. A lot of people. And I'm really happy about that because, when it's an online store, you can't test things out yourself. You can't say, hey, how's the fabric? How does it look? But the overwhelming majority of people are just saying how much they love it. We're getting repeat buyers. Everybody's, buying 2 or 3 or 4 things. I think the ones that are getting the most things are our friends, Dr. Anne Marie and our buddy Homer. They're having like a contest as to who can buy the most. So we're not going to stop that. We'll let them keep battling it out. Also, it was something that Aaron was so proud of, was the Captain Nog thing, even though it didn't really go along fully in the Deep Space Nine storyline. It was just in that flash forward, but he kind of hung his hat on saying, hey, Captain Nog happened. It's going to happen. It's canon. It's official. My character is going to become a captain. And that's really awesome. He was really proud of that. And so I thought that's the best way to honor him is, kind of the apex of, him realizing his character, of his character realizing his full potential, because Aaron realized his full potential.
Yeah.
I think he definitely.
I think that was another thing that was bittersweet about the documentary. Not to interrupt you, Ryan, but
please.
It was that you just said that he really enjoyed the idea of him being a captain, even though it was, in this future episode. But one of the things about the documentary, when they brought this hypothetical season 8 episode 1 into play, they brought it in introducing Captain Nog, which just added that much more of legitimacy to, him being the captain in the near future. And even though it didn't end well, it still validated that he was the focal point, as the captain. So
That's true.
I think that's it's something that I think he cherished a lot. I think he really enjoyed the fact that he made it up the ranks and that he was able to be, kind of on the Mount Rushmore of captains,
Yes.
and that meant a lot to Aaron. So I think that's just no better way to kind of pay tribute than to come up with the Captain Nod forever, because I think that's what he would have wanted to make sure that his legacy was enshrined in.
Not to get too deep into this stuff because we're supposed to be talking about Homecoming, but I think we're allowed to because it's our first episode back. But a little bit more about Aaron. I was talking about this today, and I think about this almost every day, honestly, is I think like I really, really wish Aaron could see what we're doing and what everybody's doing and everybody's reaction, everybody coming together. I wish he could see everybody flocking to buy the Captain Nog Forever stuff. I wish he could see all the tribute videos. I wish he could see everybody coming together and saying what a great guy he was, and half the Deep Space Nine cast coming just to talk about him, taking time out of their busy schedules. Even, Robbie from Voyager calling in from Canada, and there's just so much, on social media and on videos and in person that I think about it every day. I wish he could see it. I really wish, same thing with the service. I wish he could have seen it,
Yeah, part of me feels like he is seeing it, looking down. I feel like he's here with us in spirit. That's one of the things that keeps us going and keeps us remembering and honoring him. And his legacy lives on. We're literally continuing the vision that he laid out from the beginning, and I think that we're doing our best to make sure that we pay honor and tribute to Aaron. But it's funny because, well, it's funny and ironic. The name of this episode is Homecoming,
Yeah.
and that's where we ended with Aaron. Just before the homecoming.
He passed away the day before we were going to record this episode. So it's been 6 weeks. We were gonna record this episode the next day, and that was 6 weeks ago. So yeah, you're right. Homecoming's an interesting story.
Yeah, and he was called back home before we got to do the homecoming. He went back home, and I just see so many kinds of interesting coincidences like that. It's just bigger than life in so many ways. They talk about art imitating life and life imitating art, and you never know which one is doing which. And in some ways, they both happen. In some ways, life imitated the art of the documentary and this hypothetical season, and then in some ways, the art imitated our real life personas. So it's just this interplay between these two realms. But
so I was just gonna say before you finish that thought, we do have to take our break, and so we'll come right back in just a second, and we'll finish that thought. We'll be right back on the Seventh Rule. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Seventh Rule. We are rewatching and reviewing The Homecoming, directed by Rick Colby. Was that his name? Rick Colby?
Yeah, Rick Colby. Yep.
And we're just touching upon, as I'm sure we will continue to do so, we're touching upon, stories of Aaron and how he affected us. And art imitating life. Did you have any more to add to that, Cirroc, before I interrupted you?
No, it's just, you know, thinking about Aaron and what he brought to this show, so much information, so much perspective, always eager to discuss things, and the way he saw things. I mean, there was very nuanced. He had a way of watching these episodes and extracting different things uh, that that were things that you noticed, but sometimes wouldn't write down, or you might have not pointed it out and write it. Make sure to take note of it. But Aaron would take note of those things. I mean, I don't know how many times he talked about the camera work, the camera angles,
Hmm.
and so he would be paying attention to how the directors were setting up shots and how fast the cameras were moving, or if they were moving, just to let you that just the level of awareness that he had when he was watching the shows. I kind of watch the shows and I'm looking for the stories and I'm watching the characters act, not necessarily thinking about the lighting and whether it's an over the shoulder or a close up, or a one shot master. But these were things that he was paying attention to, because he was so interested in the details of everything, the small things, the looks, the interactions between characters. Um, this homecoming episode started off with an interchange between Odo and Quark,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting because they wanted to start off the second season, uh, right there in this Quark Odo relationship. That was the beginning of the second season. That was the beginning of the intro to the second season.
And I thought of Aaron there too when it opened up with Quark and Odo, who were kind of like the two characters that he kind of had a spotlight on for that first season. He was really really impressed with Quark. He was really impressed with the Odo. And when it opens with them, he's like, "Oh, what are you up to, Quark?" And
Right.
like, it's a shame he's not here to see it with us, but it definitely piqued my interest.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that Aaron talked about a lot, was how well the characters of Quark and Odo had developed and were kind of set already in the beginning of the show.
Hmm.
A lot of the other characters, Bashir, myself, Dax, we were all still kind of growing into the roles and finding our own acting and how we wanted to do things. But I felt like Odo and Quark were like, right from the get go, knew how they wanted to play the characters, and there was this kind of synergy between the two of them, which Armin got into when he uh, did our show and talked about having worked with Renee in the past, and having worked with somebody builds up that rapport, makes you feel comfortable. Different buttons to push when you're doing your interactions back and forth. But I think that it's interesting because Aaron, the whole first season, was telling us how much he loved Quark and Odo,
Hmm.
and here we are now, season two, episode number one. What's the first thing that the writers put out there in front of us?
Yep.
It's the Quark and Odo relationship dynamic.
And what was up with that? Like, why did Quark say, just sometimes declare peace just to, get them off their
Throw off your
toes?
enemies. Yeah,
Yeah, like, but I was waiting for like, what's his real reason? But maybe that was it. Maybe that was the whole thing, was because I felt like there should have been a reason for that scene, and maybe we just haven't
yeah.
seen it. Maybe that's going to come up in the continuation.
I thought the reason would revolve around this earring from this mysterious pretty girl alien that was upstairs, and I thought that he was doing that to kind of uh, deflect attention away from something else that he was doing with this woman upstairs. They didn't tie that together. That's just me, where I initially thought they were going with it. Because yeah, I was actually wondering the same thing, Ryan, which is why would what is the meaning behind this?
Yeah, where are they
There
going
must
with
be,
this?
because Quark always has an ulterior motive behind what he does, right?
Yeah.
There's always something else there. And in this instance, you're wondering what is the thing that is there that he's now doing this for, right? Nice afro. You instantly had an afro there out of nowhere.
Everybody that's watching the video right now was just like, what are you talking about? Because
No,
I had the camera on you when I did that.
Oh yeah, no, the graphics behind you, the way it distorted, you look like Colin Kaepernick for a second, and I was like, "Whoa, you got a full afro."
All right, I'll see if I can. I'll see if I can replicate that.
If you could replicate that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I went.
There it is. There it is. Kaepernick.
Right, here we go. So
all you need is a black fist, man. You got to put that.
Oh wait,
fist up next time.
Now it's shifted.
There it is.
I was just kind of like tinkering with the lighting because it's getting dark early. It's daylight savings now.
I know. Oh yeah. Were we supposed to move the clocks back? Or is that today?
They move by themselves. Your wall clocks and alarm clocks, you do that yourself.
Okay, so my phone is automatically.
That's right.
Set.
Your phone reset at 2:00 this morning.
Yeah, so there was another thing that just jumped out to me, and this was kind of one of the little things that bothers you. Like, I guess I'm picking up on some of the nuances that Aron used to bring to the discussion.
Oh no, it's spreading.
Yeah, it's the little. Don't worry, no Michael Chiklis references, but
you just did.
Sorry. Yeah. No, there was Sisko orders a Roctigino from the Replimat. And then he orders like this pastry type of thing, and he sits down to eat with Nana. Was it Nana's character? Yeah, I think so. And he's eating, and then he gets up to leave because he gets called away to do something. And I just kept thinking, like, who's going to pick up that plate? And like, are there any waiters on? I don't see any waiters around. So like little things like that just kind of jump out at me.
Yeah, I get those things all the time. People get mad at me for nitpicking, but you can't help but like that kind of stuff takes you out of the story. If you go, hey, like for me, it's always like that people don't say goodbye when they hang up on the phone on TV. They go, hey, yeah, so I'll be there in a few minutes. Okay, great. Click or something like that. And I'm like, nobody says goodbye anymore. Like, what if I had something else to say? What if he said, oh, and can you pick up some shit? Oh, you already hung up on me? Thanks, man. Or they leave the door open. They walk in, they leave. Aren't you going to close the door, dude? Like, anyway.
Yeah, no, little things like that. I mean, it's a nitpicking thing. It's not like, it doesn't affect the context of the storytelling, but it is just one of those things where you're like, well, who picks up that plate that he just left all that food on the table and he's got his drink sitting there,
Every episode is going to get you like that. We're going to have something. That's what we should do is every episode we should have one nitpick where we're like, dude, what gives? What, and who's going to put away that plate?
And here was my other nitpick since we're nitpicking.
Oh, we get two now already.
We get two. I'm going to double up on this one. So when O'Brien and Kira are approaching the Cardassian planet, that Cardassia or
it was a planet? It was a planet that was owned by Cardassia.
Okay, one of their Okay, so it's so when they're approaching that planet, they come up with the suggestion of let's beam out 2 people. But there's 12 people there, and as soon as they beam 2 people out, that it would raise suspicion, and then they wouldn't be able to beam everybody else out, and they wouldn't be sure that they would get Leonidas, right? So instead, they decide to land on the planet and go through the force field, which I love the scene of O'Brien and Kira talking to the Cardassian and trying to sell herself to him for 2 bars of gold lead. Yeah, and she unbuttons her shirt and I got something for you. Want to look at it?
And then does some Kirk foo on him.
Yeah, and I love that scene, actually. It was great. Just like I thought the scene where they're being hailed by the Cardassian ship and she has to make up a reason why they're there. So she comes up with gold germain or something like that.
Germain.
Was it something like that?
I thought it was Gold Tito, actually. Was it?
It was a Tito Germain, one of the Jacksons.
Yeah, it was one of the Jacksons for sure.
But yeah, so she comes up with, gold germain, and that's, sells them on the idea that they're there to drop off some goods. And I like that scene as well, the kind of creative on the fly making up the lie type of scene. So I love those two scenes, that scene and the one where Kira is flirting with the Cardassian, trying to get him to, put up the money. But one thing that bothers me on a little side note was, I was thinking the guy says, all right, well, 4 of us will stay behind and fight off the Cardassian while the rest of you flee. I noticed that, number one, there was no argument of who the 4 would be.
I thought the same thing. Did people just volunteer? Was it already pre-established 8 years ago? They're like, if we're ever going to escape, you're the 4 that are going to have to fight.
Because if I'm 10 years in the labor camp, I'm leaving, guys. I'm not sticking behind. I'm not going to be like, yeah, you guys go ahead. I'll fight them off and stay behind. No, I'm like, no, you two stay. I think we can do.
Or you know what? What if you're one of the 12, and then we're like, okay, we're going to escape, and this jerk goes like, hey, 4 of us will hold you. You're like, we're getting
who are you to decide? Why not 2? Why not 3?
How about you? How about you fight them off since you're so ready? I'm going to go.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed was when O'Brien leaves, he doesn't leave his phaser with one of the 4 guys who got left behind. You would think he would say, here, you take this and cover us while we run to the ship. Instead,
O'Brien's like, I'm going to need this thing when these guys get shot down in about 5 seconds.
So 4 guys with one phaser, so it's really not that effective. And then I didn't see any drawing of straws. The 4 guys are like, yeah, we'll stay. So that was funny to me. And then the other thing that I thought was funny, because, if I'm in that moment and I was literally watching it and in the moment thinking, what would I have done? What I would have done was left 2 people behind, armed them both with phasers, and then as I'm leaving, beam the last 2 people out, because I could only beam 2 people.
You nailed it. You're right.
Right? So that would, just as a matter of practicality, that's how I would have approached that particular, scene. But, all in all, I think what the real message was behind it, and, I don't know if there's any one particular message when you watch these shows. They're always layered with these different contextual messages here, messages there. You hear that, the writers are always thinking about conflict. And so, there's going to be conflict throughout a Deep Space Nine episode. That's pretty much a guarantee. Whether it's conflict between characters who like each other, like Odo and Quark, or conflict between people that don't like each other, like Gul Dukat and Sisko, and kind of this way.
I love that scene with Dukat and Kira, though. It was super short, but everything that Mark Alimo does as Dukat is gold. And every reaction that Nana gives back to him is so layered and so good. Like when she just stands there and she watches him and listens to what he's saying, and you could tell she's just sitting there going like, what's your game here?
Yeah, BS. My BS meter is just going ding,
off
ding,
the
ding,
charts
ding.
right now.
Yeah.
And she's just like looking at him like, okay.
And Sisko turns, he's like, yeah, I'm surprised too. I had no idea he'd say this kind of stuff. But let's go with it because it sounds pretty good for us. But that was a short scene, but it really had impact,
It was still great, yeah.
And here Mark Alimo is not even in the room. He's on a computer screen.
I was thinking the same thing. That is hard to act. You get one scene in a room with a wall, and you're just acting, and he's still got like that. He's just oozing with that Cardassian ego,
Just,
so good.
It's so good, and he's so good at it.
What would you call that Cardassian type of ego that he has? It's like partially chauvinistic, partially narcissistic. Always like I'm the victim kind of thing. Also partially like a superiority complex, and partially sexual towards her. What would you call that?
I would call it the President of the United States.
All of those things.
it's kind of oozing all of that, right? Like this confidence,
Especially the sexual part.
well, more the superiority part. But yeah, no, I think of it that way. I mean, it is kind of like this. I'm doing you a favor, even when I'm doing the right thing. There's this like, you're welcome.
And he was always so condescending in his tone. He'd be like, "Major," like I loved it. Anyway, I thought that was the best. I've said it before, but he was kind of the reason I got into acting. That character was the reason I started taking acting seriously. Was because I was just blown away by that, and I realized that's what actors do, and I wanted to do that because it was amazing and awesome. And
yeah, there's this way that he's so condescending and so confident of himself that it's just it oozes, it rubs you such the wrong way. But in this case, he actually is doing the right thing, and I don't know if there's we don't know because it was to be continued. Certainly, there's going to be some kind of turns and twists around the corner, but for right now, he said the right things. He didn't say it in the right way, but he said the right things, and I just like the way that the characters are, when we talk with people, they mention about plot and characters, and they mention the difference between the two. And one thing that I really can say is really evident in DS9 is the characters and how well the characters are just spot on for what they're there to accomplish. I like the way Sisko takes very subtle initiative for different things. In this episode, he noticed, for example, that everybody already knew about this runabout that she wanted to take. You know about it too.
I wanted to bring that up. The best line was when he says, when he's like, you everybody knows, and he says, did she tell everybody? Did everybody know? And then Chief goes, well, I doubt she told Quark. That was that was the best
one
line.
Guy on the stage, and then he's like, as far as Quark goes, tell him that's going on. But no, I thought that was a small way, how he picks up on the fact that everybody knew about this runabout that she wanted. But I think in the leadership way, he forces her to take O'Brien with her.
Yeah, that's right.
And which alters the whole narrative, and it just shows me how Sisko was a leader. He thinks these kinds of things out. He doesn't tell her, no, you can't have a runabout right away. He says, let me think about it. He knows he can start a war with this whole. This is like it actually reminds me of a SEAL Team 6 kind of prisoners raid. When a SEAL team goes out into Syria or something to get one of their prisoners or one of their people, and they raid a compound to get the people out of there, extracted. So I kind of look at this as one of those kinds of things, right? That mission goes a wrong way, and you can start an international crisis, right?
I do remember now what my major nitpick was, and by major I mean extremely minor, but like at least once an episode I come up with something where I'm like, come on, man. Hey, so there's no cameras anywhere on the whole station. 3 people just came, abducted somebody, tortured them, branded Quark, and they're like, did you see what they look like? And I'm like, you don't have cameras in the future? Dude, nobody has any cameras in the future at all. I actually wrote that down. I'm like, where are the cameras?
Yeah.
Gas stations can tell you who came in and branded somebody on the head. But 300 years in the future, Starfleet was like, well, we don't have any cameras anywhere. What about your sensors? What about logs? What about all the technology you have? I don't know.
That's one thing. The other thing, now that we're doing this, because it's a snowball effect.
It's the nitpick hour.
It's the nitpick hour. But they brand him. I mean, how effective effective is a brand if it can get taken off in the same amount of time that it gets put on, right?
Well, that's
Because
their technology now, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I brand you, but you can take the brand off in about 30 seconds or less. So not exactly that effective.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's funny. You're right. There's no cameras anywhere. It's like, yeah, nobody caught that on footage, you know? What were those characters? I actually want to know the mask that they wore to distort their face. It was like a see-through clear kind of mask, wasn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't
If I'm
really
not
tell,
mistaken,
but
they were wearing these robes.
Mhm.
It looked like they were wearing robes with hoods, and then it looked almost like what a basketball player wears when they break their nose or something, and they have that
Like
clear
Bill Lambier.
uh, face mask on to protect face.
You remember Bill
Yeah, like the
Lambier,
Bill
right?
Lambier or the
Dude, he made it famous,
yeah,
man.
absolutely. He was the first one to do it. I don't think anybody was before him. But I mean, Kobe wore one for a while. Rip Hamilton wore one
He
for the
sure did,
longest
yeah.
time. So yeah, it looked like they were wearing one of those masks, but a full face version of it. And I only asked that because that would be my next year's Halloween outfit. One of those, one of the circle, you know. Um, but no, I thought it was interesting. There was certain elements there that I just once again I think DS9 is so ahead of its time.
Yeah,
They basically do a SEAL Team 6 extraction,
yeah.
you know, which is something we end up seeing in real life later, like you know, in recent history. Um, they have this organized terrorist cell that goes around branding people, you know, which
Teaching
is
them a
something
lesson.
teaching them a lesson. You know, still, like I said, something that we see in today, you know, in different ways. I
Mhm.
see these kind of organized groups that have logos and go around and cause mayhem, you know, for a purpose, but they do it anyways. You know, I can name whatever Antifa or whatever it is that do it, or extremist groups, but they have logos. They walk around, they cover their face in some cases, you know, and they show up to protest and make a point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, once again, you look at DS9 and here they are 20-25 years before these things come to life in our own world, you know, and in reality in different ways. Um, you know, it's funny because I actually keep hearing this word deep state, and I don't think I've ever heard of deep state prior to the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years.
Oh, really?
It's yeah, I don't remember 20 years ago people talking about the deep state or deep
I
state.
had, but I'm a nerd. So yeah.
Okay,
But
yeah.
yeah, no,
So, but
it's true. Like I never heard the mainstream media and everybody talking about it, you know. Um, it's definitely out there now. It's definitely
yeah, yeah, and so I mean, it wasn't like common thing in like the '90s or the '80s for people to
definitely
say,
not.
"Yeah, the deep state is out here trying to oppress us," you know. So it's just interesting to me how DS9 in particular was like so far ahead of its time on these kinds of issues, terrorism, for example.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the deep states of concept of deep states, these organized terrorist cells,
Racism,
so
as
racism.
as Nana pointed out, she, you know, when she came on our show, she said, "My character, I had to come to grips with the fact that my character was a racist, you know, against Cardassians, you know, in Duet." And sometimes they would cover 2 or 3 of these things in one episode, like in Duet or like in this one, you know?
And it's funny you brought that up because this is another thing that stood out in my mind, which really didn't get into too much in this episode, but it was talked about, and that was when Jake gets stood up by the Bajoran
Yes.
girl.
Thank you for bringing we only have a couple minutes left, so thank you for
Yeah,
bringing that up. I wanted to talk about that.
yeah, Jake gets stood up, and the reason is because he's not Bajoran, so
Yeah,
he's basically being discriminated against, right?
100%.
And
Absolutely, that's what
we
it
don't,
was.
yeah, we don't talk into it, and Cisco doesn't really get too deep into it, but that's that's another way that DS9 was dealing with racism, very directly, not subtly
Mhm.
or indirectly, but a direct
Well,
way.
that's something that even if we don't see it on the show, we imagine as fans call it in my head canon, as in my head, what I believe happened on the show is that once those cameras are off and the conversation continues, Ben, Captain Commander Sisko sits down and says, a few hundred years ago, we had to deal with these kind of things, our people specifically, and other people more generally. And this is what's going on right now on Bajor, and Jake gets, more
So
information
there was this
on that.
whole civics and history lesson that happened in our own head canon, right?
That's what happens when
Where he
something like this
explains
comes up.
to him, every once in a while, these things are going to happen to you, Jake. You're going to experience things that are,
Mhm.
because of a result of societal,
Yeah.
pressures or whatever. And so, yeah, you would hear these kinds of conversations, but it was interesting that it was talked about. It wasn't really elaborated on, but it was talked about.
Yeah, because we all get it. They don't need to beat you over the head with it.
Yeah,
We get it. We get the metaphor immediately. Mhm.
yeah. So it just reminded me that racism was still around even 500 years from now. Because here it is. Aaron, Nog didn't want to be my friend because I was a human.
That's right.
The Bajorans don't want to deal with me. I'm
Oh,
like, what?
O'Brien's the most racist of them all. He's always like talking about the Cardis and
Yeah,
Worf is always like, even for a Romulan, like
yeah.
everybody, all these races, all
Right. And you're
so
just like, okay. So it really hasn't gone anywhere. It just changes from maybe a particular color of racism to just the fact that you're human.
yeah, you're from a different
You're part of the
planet.
human race. you know so
Yeah, in one of the best Next Generation episodes, it's a two-parter called Chain of Command. One of the Cardassians is holding Captain Picard captive, and this little girl, like 5 years old, comes in and she's talking with her dad right in front of Picard, who's being held captive and tortured. And
she doesn't say, hey, what's up with that?
well, yeah, and she brings it up, and he says, and the Cardassian tells his daughter, he says, yes, but human parents don't love their children like we do, you know,
Yeah,
and he's
that's the justification.
ingraining it in her head, and then
Yeah,
she leaves, and then Picard kind of has like a little moment where he's like,
that's what you teach a kid.
yeah, you suck, dude. Especially because the kid was all cute. He's like, she's very beautiful, she's very cute.
Yeah,
Something like, it must be hard to be teaching her hatred, something like
yeah. No, those are the kinds of issues that they talk about. And I like that because when you take it out of context of blacks and whites and Latinos and Asians and, what we're dealing with here in our own reality, and you take it into Romulans, Bajorans, and Cardassians,
oh
it
my,
allows you to look at it with a different set of glasses on, right? You're not looking at it the same as if you're emotionally attached to a subject or a topic, or you have your own preconceived ideas about
exactly.
Islam or Judaism or this or that, and you already have your ideas about it. In this way, you're like, oh wow, Cardassians they're real jerks.
How can they think like that? Wait a second. Do I think like that? Do we think like that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one of the benefits of the shows and these kind of storytelling. One thing that'll never go away. It's one of the things that'll make it timeless, because you get a set of rules, and those set of rules in this alternate space is very parallel to the rules that we play by in our own world, in our own daily lives. So
Right.
it's just a beautiful thing to watch, and we got to look for those little nuances of those subtle things that really go by quickly. They might be one scene, it might only be 10, 20, 30 seconds, or one appearance from Gold Dugat, but it can be impactful,
That's the
and
beauty of sci-fi. They have these metaphors that are really just holding up a mirror to you.
that's what I love about doing this show and talking about these episodes and getting to know more perspective. And now I can see why the Star Trek fans are so hungry to ask more questions. Like they want to ask the producers, they want to ask the actors, they want to know more about, so they can have more information to piece these kinds of this big jigsaw puzzle of ideas and, the future and the present and the past, all kind of mangled up together in these shows. So
Mangled.
it's a real pleasure, man. And this is our first show, second season, episode 1, without Aron, and but he's with us. He's with us, in spirit in everything that we do. So
Yeah,
I'm glad that we were able to get through this, and and pay tribute in this last month to him and going forward.
yeah, we're gonna miss him every day. He's gonna keep coming up, and I don't think any of our listeners or viewers are gonna mind, because he's always and forever a part of this show, part of Deep Space Nine, a part of Star Trek, and a part of the Seventh Rule.
Yeah.
And everybody loves him, everybody honors him, and it's been really great to see how much the community has come together in his name. So with that being said, we are out of time. In fact, we went over time, but that's fine because whatever. And who cares?
Keep your ears open. Keep your ears open.
That's right. But thank you all for joining us. For those of you listening in, thank you. For those of you watching, stay tuned for the free-for-all. We might have a surprise for you. Who knows? And for everybody, always remember the 7th rule. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the 7th rule. This is the free-for-all with Kat R. King, Heather Jordan, Cirroc Lofton, and Ira Steven Behr. My name is Ryan T. Husk. So today's big question, Ira actually brought it up himself. What's your favorite flavor of LaCroix?
I'm not going
to. Well, Cirroc, we'll start with you.
I haven't dabbled in the LaCroix.
Well, there's a problem right there. So
that's a problem.
No.
I'm a Hanson's guy. I like my Hanson's cream sodas. I'm sorry, guys.
I love Hanson.
I love Hanson cream soda too.
I've never had it. I don't think we have it here.
Okay, well, that was a good beginning, Ryan.
Way to go.
Heather, you don't have Hanson's or you don't have LaCroix?
Hanson.
Okay,
Hanson.
That's forgivable. What's your favorite flavor of LaCroix?
I think, isn't there like a raspberry one? I
Probably.
can't remember like what the names are called. There's probably like a raspberry one that I
Kat,
actually, yeah, we all have our favorite flavors, Ryan. I have a real question though about the show though.
Oh,
I have a question.
Oh no!
I want to know where this idea of the circle came from, and that started off this season 2 doubleheader episode. Where's the impetus for this this terror cell inside Bajoran terror cell? This circle.
Is that for Kat or Ira?
No, that's for Ira. I mean,
I was going to say, I'm like, well, let me tell you all about that since I totally ran the show, right?
Yeah. I just want to know
favorite flavor of LaCroix.
Yeah. Are they? Is it something that I don't know? What inspired you to come up with that?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, it was established that there had been either freedom fighters or terrorists, going up against the Cardassians. Obviously, Kira was a freedom fighter / terrorist. This is all before 9/11, when those designations seem to be less fraught than they are now. So that was just playing off of that, and just to say that once that begins, once you have to go to a place of extreme action and extreme thought, even when the situation that caused that has gone away, the Cardassians are gone, that kind of extreme thought just doesn't shut off, doesn't go away. that lifestyle is not easy to turn off. Look at Kira. I mean, she was the angriest woman in the galaxy for a long time. Season 1, stay out of her path. So I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. I mean, it just was taking what we had already established and continuing on with it.
No, I think it's interesting because nowadays you see these kinds of fringe extremist groups that are organized and have their logos and kind of do this kind of ways in which they protest that are kind of a little bit more across the line than just voicing their opinion. So it just seems to me that a lot of the topics that you discussed on DS9 ended up becoming part of the everyday headlines of what we see afterwards, which is like prophetic.
Only because when you kill 3,000 Americans, it becomes headlines. People were being killed, on this planet in all kind of ways that we conveniently don't make a big deal about because it's not happening here. Mm-hmm. But once that happens, suddenly terrorism has meaning. Well, terrorism has had meaning, for many, many, many years. And did Pete write that episode? Did he do the siege? Did he write number 2 and Mike wrote number 3 of that trilogy?
I think so. I think it was, yeah.
I should say also, which I didn't say before, besides losing Aaron, we lost Pete Fields this year, which was a big loss.
We did do a tribute to him a couple months ago, yeah.
Yeah.
It was really hard. I stayed friends with Pete and watched his health go over the years, and was not easy to watch. But he was a talented guy, I mean, and gave the show, he gave us Garrick. If it wasn't for him, we'd never have plain simple Garrick, not the way he was played by Andy. So, it's been a tough year for Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peter did a lot of the episodes. I think
quite a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
We looked him up because when we did one of his episodes, we looked him up and we just saw just how many he had done, and then we saw that he had passed away just recently. Quite a few really good episodes. Did you have a favorite Peter Allen Fields episode, Ira?
Well, my favorite Peter Allen Fields episode, I don't know if he would say it was his favorite episode, but my favorite was Duet. And the reason it was my favorite is for a very specific reason, which was it was at the end of the season, and Michael was going to do cleanup on In the Hands of the Prophet, which Robert Wolfe had written, and I was given Duet to do the same. So I went in with Pete to do the final pass on that script, and I was a lot of the stuff that the Harris Yulin character was saying when he was talking about blood on the hands, but we were clean. A lot of that I was riffing, standing around, acting with a in Pete's room while he was by the computer, and I was like literally like gesturing and just like stream of consciousness, and he's writing it all down, and we were laughing so hard through some of it because I suck as an actor for one thing, and I was just saying so many obscene. I was saying a lot of things that obviously did not get put in the show, but we were tired. It was the end of the first season or close to the end, and we were just batshit crazy at that point, and it was just a lot of laughs. And Pete and I had a lot of laughs that first season. So that was my favorite. That was my favorite by far. But and also, I love the fact that he did come up with things. Pete came up with Latinum. That was his thing. He came up with the self-sealing stem bolts, which was he came up with Eric.
What a trailblazer!
He had a lot of good, and that was another great moment because Pete next to Avery. Pete was the most interesting guy on the 7 years.
Hey, what about Dabo? Who came up with the idea for Dabo?
Wow,
good question.
Dabo, that's a good.
Do we know?
And it's funny because now I have a friend whose nickname is Dabo, having nothing to do with the show. It wasn't me. That's all I can say. It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't. I didn't come up with Dabo.
I like the Dabo girls. Just to throw that out there.
Why?
Your favorite flavor of Dabo girl?
You know what? Right? They made great dates for young Jake.
That's right. That's right.
What happens in Quark's bar stays in Quark's bar.
Heather, do you have a who came up with question for Ira?
Man, you gotta give me more time. I need these questions in advance next time.
Then it wouldn't be a free for all. It would be a hangout, I guess.
Well, in all fairness, we started the free for all with questions about some beverage that I still have no idea.
That was an alcoholic question.
Well, I like the Latinum idea because Latinum. I mean, it seems like it was always there. It just
when I said to Pete that at one point I actually said I praised Pete and said Latinum. That's that. I love the word Latinum, and he looked at me like I was a complete and utter moron, and just said, "I'm serious." He didn't smile; he just looked at me and said, "Platinum," without the P. Oh shit! It was like it's like, but it sounds so great as Latin. Wow.
Better than Ilver.
If that's the best idea you've ever heard, my friend. You haven't heard good ideas in your life.
I like Kat's response there. She said it was better than Ilver.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. See, that's that he was a genius.
It's better than old.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. But yeah,
people too modest.
Titanium.
Titanium.
Yeah.
I wish I had all those at the tip of my tongue. But he was so dismissive of me that
he was like, really, it's not that great of an idea. Yeah. It's just platinum without the P.
Yeah, I was like, are you kidding me? That impresses you?
But it does sound good. It sounds like something that's always been in Star Trek lore, but it really wasn't.
Yeah.
Especially when you add the gold pressed in front of it, pressed platinum. It makes it sound. It sounds so much more official.
My ears are tingling.
Heather, what were you going to say?
I am not sure if they established any of the Ferengi culture before DS9. I don't think they did, right? It was
a little
in DS9.
No.
Who came up with the Grand Nagus?
That was me.
That was you?
Yes, the Grand Nagus rules of acquisition. That's my cross to bear. And I remember actually, there's a lot I don't remember, but as I've told people before, I remember sitting at my desk in the Hart Building at Paramount with a thesaurus looking up words like powerful and leader, and there was it was from India. There's a Negus, I think, Negus, and I saw that. I thought, Negus, that's different. And then I thought, Nagus, or maybe it was Nagus, I don't remember. But anyway, I saw that word and I said, Nagus. That is so, not what you would expect. What can you do to kind of push it over the top that is important? And then it was Grand Nagus, and suddenly, okay, that sounds like someone important, and yet also somewhat silly. So
yeah.
And the rules
That's
of
good.
acquisition, huh? That's where we have the name of this podcast, the seventh rule. Do you know what the seventh rule is, Ira?
I
Uh-oh.
don't
On
have
the
the
spot.
book with me, but
We didn't realize that one of the final episodes of the first season, they actually say it, and none of us realized that. Odo and Quark were having a conversation,
Yes.
and Odo says, "Always remember the seventh rule, harumph," or whatever, And Quark says, "Keep your ears open."
yeah,
And that was Aaron that came up with that.
yeah.
Someone said, "Oh, sorry."
Sorry, no, I was going to just say, because your question was about the culture, right? But I know we got the Umox from that. We got the Umox in Ethan Phillips when he was a Ferengi on TNG in the episode where they kidnapped Loxana, because one of the Ferengi falls in love with Loxana Troy, and then they
Listen, everyone.
and they abduct her, and then he explains Umox from TNG. But I think that's about it. I mean, in terms of, I think he really did obviously develop them much more in DS9, but I do remember the Umox being introduced in that TNG episode. That was the only thing I could think of.
Good knowledge.
Particularly the female Ferengis, that definitely came up.
Oh yeah,
or should I say their lack of culture.
Well, no, the lack of clothing was from the original TNG episode.
Oh, was it?
He was stuck with that. It was a line that Quark says, and you let your females go out.
Oh, that's right.
Clothing,
That's right.
which we hated, to be honest. It didn't make a lot of sense, and it just seemed so. I really would have liked to have been there in season 2, I guess. I think it was in season 2 of TNG. I was there for season 3 when they already had been created. But whoever in that writer's room said, yeah, and they'll have the women go without clothing, and that sounds like
they're all subservient and submissive and
subservient, and it's all like, really? And there's no like spin on that. It's just that's just flat out like that. And there's no it's like
just one dimensional. That's it.
Someone should have said, nah, not really.
I don't think they ever intended to elaborate on that, and then all of a sudden the Ferengi were like all about DS9. So
they're trying to make them the next villains. That's why they just made them like these bad guys that just want to acquire everything and have all their women naked and hiss and use a rope weapon that we hardly ever saw again. So they definitely.
But no one could take them seriously.
Yeah, but they definitely grew in Deep Space Nine. So that's about all the time we have for the free for all. But I think my favorite flavor is lime.
I dislocated my shoulder. Okay.
We got an injury timeout.
Yeah.
But very special thanks to Ira Steven Behr for joining us. And
thank you.
Thanks, Ira.
Thank you all.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And for Cat R. King, Heather Jordan, Imo Radke, our brand new associate producer, Cirroc Lofton, for the late, great Aron Eisenberg, I'm Ryan T. Husk, and always remember the seventh rule.
Bye, guys.